Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. Today we'll be discussing 3 questions on the topic development processes and the development industry, role of civil services in a democracy. We'll be discussing 2 questions on the static portion on these 2 topics and 1 question will be from the current affair and that is of economy. Let's see the overview of all the 3 questions. The first question is about the politicization of civil services and its consequences. The second question is asking about the role of cooperatives in the economic growth and sustainable development. And the last question is asking about the implications of the high inflation and falling consumer sentiment. So let's see each question one by one. First question. In the recent years, there have been concerns about the politicization of civil services in India. What do you understand by the politicization of the civil services? And what are its consequences? So, this has 2 major portions in the body. We'll have the 2 parts. First is, we have to define what is the politicization of civil services, and in the next part, we have to write about the consequences. See, as it is a 10-marker question, what other thing we can do is, we can just mention this, like define this in the introduction itself about the politicization of civil services, and in body part, we will write in detail what are the consequences of the politicization of civil services. So let's see the answer. We will deal the answer in 3 major portions: introduction, body and conclusion. In this particular question, what are the different ways we can write intro? The first one is directly define the politicization of civil services, or the second one is you can write some context. Like in this case, civil services are meant to be the steel frame of India. But the exigencies of the electoral politics are corroding the steel frame. This is largely a result of confusion between the political parties and the civil servants guided by the vested interests. So this is the context we are setting, that there are some conflicts or the tussle going on between the political parties to gain power. So for this reason, they are politicizing the civil services for their maximum gains. So this is the context-based introduction. The other way is simply define the politicization of civil services. What do you mean by the politicization of civil services? When the political authorities try to put pressure or influence or interfere in the functioning of the bureaucracy, then the decisions or the actions are influenced by the political considerations, not driven on the basis of the professionalism, merit based or the larger public interest. So you can write this definition in the intro. So let's see the body part. The body is asking about what are the consequences. So we have to write the consequences. Consequences also means that how this politicization of civil services manifests into some different forms. The first and the very foremost is the appointment, the career progression, transfers, promotions, or the recruitment. So now these appointments or the transfers or the promotions of the civil servants are based on the political affiliations or on the basis of the loyalty towards that political party or some political agendas or some political ideologies. Now the appointments or the transfers or the promotions are not based on the merit. So this is the first consequences or the manifestation of the politicization of civil services. The next is politicians or the political parties tries to put pressure on the bureaucrats to fulfill their political goals. Now they tries to accomplish the political gains over the welfare of the larger public interest. Next comes the public policy. when the bureaucracy is politicized, then the decisions are not their own. They are influenced or aligned with the political ideologies, whosoever is in power. So the public policy, which should be on the basis of the demand of the public or according to the welfare of the public or on the public interest, now this has misaligned according to the larger political interests. Next comes the weakening of the institutions. Weakening of the institutions means the civil servants are meant to act impartial or independent. They shouldn't compromise their objectivity or efficiencies. But with this politicization of the civil services, now they are not working in their own capacity. They are working according to the alignment or under the influence of the political parties. So if the bureaucracy will not work independently as a whole institution, this will weaken out. The next comes is, see, all these are consequences only, but these are special impacts on the democracy. So either you can write with this only, or you can write a separate heading, that impact on democracy of the politicization of civil services. The first one is the destruction of the democratic values like the justice, liberty, fraternity, transparency, accountability, corruption prospects. Public trust will erode, neutrality will not be there. How this transparency will be reduced or accountability will be reduced? Now the bureaucrats will start hiding some crucial data which should be disclosed to the public. Now, because they have aligned to the political authorities and not according to the public interest, they will not disclose the information. So now the overall process of governance is not that transparent. And now, due to this, they are not even accountable to the public because public do not have access to the information. So, in the democratic values, you can write public trust erosion, neutrality has decreased or not there, and multiple aspects like transparency, accountability, responsiveness, or the governance aspects. Next comes the bureaucratic capacity. When the politicization is not there, means that bureaucracy is working in their full capacity. Means they are taking decisions or they are doing the decision making administration in their own capacity according to some evidence based, according to some people's demand, according to the objectivity, according to the merit, welfare of the people. But now, due to this politicization, they cannot fulfill the demand of the people. So now, they cannot work in their full capacity. They have to abide by the what politician says. Next comes the partisan bureaucracy, infamously also known as the Babu Neta nexus. And when people know that this bureaucrat or the bureaucracy whole works under the sayings of the politicians, they do not trust the bureaucracy. They do not trust the government. So partisan bureaucracy is harmful for the good democratic principle or for the good working of the democracy. Next comes the minority right. How the politicization will deteriorate or the minority rights will be suppressed? Because now the politicians or the political authorities will also work for the popular vote. They will oversee the minority interest. Next comes the corruption. If the whole process of this governance is not transparent or accountable, then there are very high chances of malpractices or the corrupt practices. So these ways we are completing our body part. Next comes to the conclusion. Because the question is asking about the challenges or the negative consequences of the politicization of civil services. In conclusion, it is the good way to write the conclusion or to end the whole answer within the positive note, or like write some measures to reduce the effect of this politicization of civil services. Because the first issue was the appointment, so the first measure should be the appointment, transfer or the recruitment process should be merit based or the transparent process it should be. Second is secure the independence of civil servants. How the civil servant will feel independence or how they will be independent? When we will fix the tenure of their service at least one place. In this case, in the security of tenure or with respect to security or secure the independence of civil services, we can quote the Supreme Court judgment in the TSR Subramaniam case. In this case, Supreme Court suggested that civil servant should avoid verbal orders. Civil servant at least who are at high posts. Second comes, Supreme Court suggested that there should be minimum security of tenure like approximately 5 years, 6 years. So security of tenure should be there. Third one is Civil Services Board establishment. Now what this Civil Services Board will do? This establishment of the Civil Services Board lead to the appointment or the recruitment or the transfer process will not be on the whims and the fancies of the government but on some board where there are the fixed members, like on the basis of the UPSC pattern, and this board should be constituted under the constitution. So the things will be transparent and accountable. Then the last one is comprehensive civil services law, to take a look holistically how this civil services is working. So this was the security of or to how to secure the independence of the civil services. Next comes the objectivity in relationship. With whom? Bringing objectivity in the relationship between the politician and the bureaucrat. If objectivity comes, means we standardize something, we can measure then how this function, the relationship between the bureaucrat and the politician is working. If this is objective, not on the verbal orders of the politician, then at least some transparency can be bring in or some accountability can be boosted. Like second ARC has recommended that it should be output outcome framework. Like the politician has to give in written or has to some standardize that what this civil servant has to do. Like to promote the education, this civil servant has to open 50 schools. This is output. Now the outcome is how this literacy rate has boosted up, how many students or the children go to the school. So this is outcome based. So if everything is standardized, we can measure the output or the outcome. Then nothing will be in the verbal, so that there will be more transparency. Next comes the training aspect. Training and the development. We have to work on the capacity building of the civil servants. We have to provide training for the ethical decision making in the cases of conflict. Civil servants should be trained to resolve the conflicts and to take the ethical decision. Next comes the whistleblower protection. When the malpractices or the corrupt practices or this nexus between Babu and Neta is going on, if some whistleblower blows this information, he or she should be protected. So there should be some protection for the whistleblowers so as to reveal or expose or disclose this information. Then strengthening of the institutions. There is a very good saying by Bismarck that with the bad laws and good civil servants, it's still possible to govern. But with the bad civil servants, even the best laws cannot help. So we have to maintain the integrity, the honesty, the ethos and the impartial nature of the civil servants. So then only this institution of civil services will be strengthened to do its working. So this was our conclusion. Let's see the model answer of this first question. It started with the politicization of civil services and the definition of the politicization of civil services. Then it is writing about the consequences and the measures to minimize the politicization. So we have almost everything covered in our discussion part. The conclusion is all about the good practices. Scandinavian countries case study it has given. So let's move on to the second question. What role do cooperatives play in fostering economic growth and sustainable development? This is a 10-marker question and we have to write the role of cooperatives in economic growth and sustainable development. So in introduction, what we can write? We can write about the definition of the cooperatives, that like-minded people have come together voluntarily for achieving some common goal. You can also link it with the fundamental right and DPSP. Then next comes some current affair, like the creation of the separate Ministry of Cooperation. You can link this thing with the question part. That is, by creating the separate Ministry of Cooperation signifies the importance our present government gives to the potential of the cooperation in achieving inclusive growth via Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas and empowering the millions of people and do the sustainable, inclusive, holistic development of the nation. So you can write this aspect in this particular question. Then there are multiple ways, like you can write about the Gandhian idea of trusteeship, collectivism. It was also like sustainable development only. Then you can quote something from the Prime Minister's speech. Like the Prime Minister has said on the 75th Independence Day that cooperatives are not just a system with the network of laws and rules, but cooperatives is a spirit, it is a culture and a mindset of collective growth. So that collective growth, it will be linked with the inclusive growth and the sustainable development. So these all are valid intro. Whatever suits you the best, you can write in the introduction part. Next comes the body part. So we have to tell the role of cooperatives in promoting economic growth and sustainable development. Before going deep into this body part, let's just discuss some basic concept with respect to the cooperatives and how it helps in achieving the sustainable development. Because most of the student can easily do this part. But this connection building requires some brainstorming, or majority of the students not able to do something related to cooperatives and sustainable development. So let's discuss something with respect to this. There is one concept known as the tragedy of the commons, or don't go by the phrase, just try to understand this. A situation when an individual have the excess of the public good or the public resource, when act in the selfish aspects or the self-interest, he tries to deplete the resources or exploit the resources, which results into the depletion of the collective resources in the long run. So this is the concept of the tragedy of common. Common means the common good which is available for the whole of the society, but some individuals are using it or exploiting it for their goal, for their selfish benefits, which should be available for the collective good of the society. So this is the individual aspect. So how cooperatives will not lead to this selfish aspects and how this depletion of resources can be minimized with the help of cooperatives. Let's understand this. What is cooperatives? When the multiple or the diverse set of the people come together to achieve some common goal. Now, no individual is taking the decision. Now the participatory approach is there. Now the huge number of the people is taking decision for one particular thing. In this particular case, in the case of cooperatives, authoritative tendencies to do the selfish aspects is reduced, Now this is a more democratic decision making process. So when this cooperative as a whole institution will take some decision, it is not against the common good or some collective good. It will always benefit the whole society or will benefit the collective good of the society. So this is the difference between the individual taking decision and the cooperative taking decision. So this is why the question is asking about the cooperatives and the sustainable development. When the decision is democratic, when the decision is from the participatory process, then it is not against the environment or some economic aspect or the social aspect. The decision will be sustainable. The decision will reap the benefit in the short term and in the long run. So this is the concept with respect to the cooperatives and sustainability. So the tragedy of commons we have covered, democratic participation we know, now collectivism. Cooperatives operationalize the principle of collectivism. Collectivism means now some people collectively can bargain from government, bargain from bank, bargain from other service provider, because it is not possible for the individual to access all the resources from the society or the economy. But if they group together, then they demand something, then they have the high bargaining power. So they have the collective power to pool the resources, to allocate the resources to the different set of people or amongst the member of that cooperative. So it boosts the collective approach. Then comes the community level decision making. If some decision comes from the central power, they do not know the reality of the ground. They cannot take decision which is wholesome or which is sustainable for that particular community or that particular area. But if those people who lives there, they know the local issues, local challenges, they know what is the local solution for that. So the cooperatives, they tries to optimize their decisions. They can come together and take the decisions which is sustainable for themselves or the sustainable for the society, for the community as a whole or for the nation as a whole. So these are the aspects which are linking to the sustainable development. So if you know the theoretical part, that how cooperatives reap the benefits of collectivism, of community level decision making, then you can be easily write about the sustainable development. Next comes the employment generation, because the group of people comes together and tries to do the employment or they generate the employment in starting for the members, and when this is scaling up or the scaled up, they provide employment to the other people as well. Like in the case of, we have seen the Amul Dairy, it is a cooperative, then Nandini in Karnataka, then Lijjat Papad, all are the examples. Then comes the poverty alleviation. When they have the access to the finances, when they can resource pool, when they can allocate the resources to the different set of people, then it help alleviating the poverty of the members of the cooperative and in the other areas as well. And also the cooperatives helps in women empowerment. Next is sustainable practices. Let's take the example of agriculture. How cooperatives help in sustainable agricultural practices. When cooperatives are not there, multiple farmers are there, they have the small area of land with together farmer 1, farmer 2 and farmer 3. Because all the farmers are not rich, they cannot afford the mechanized tools for their farms. And with time their productivity will lose. They cannot buy whole inputs for their farms. They cannot get the irrigation facilities well. They cannot get the mechanized tools for their farms. So what they can do is, they can do the cooperative farming. They merge their land. Now they ask the government to give some services to them, like tractors for mechanized farming, they can ask the government to make a pipeline or the irrigation line for their collective land. Now they can ask the inputs or some loan waivers from the government that this season was distressed, so we want this. Now they have the high bargaining power. And with this, they can also practice organic farming, zero budget natural farming, because the individual farmer cannot do organic farming. Organic farming inputs are costly. But when they come together, they can do this. And also with the climate change, the crop yield or the crop productivity is deteriorating day by day. But with this and with the good practices, the crop yield can be increased, because the crop yield per acre of the land is less. But when the segregation or the fragmentation of the land is reduced or the land consolidation is there, then the crop yield or the crop productivity will rise up. They can take care of the food security now. Okay. Now you can write on the various aspects as well, like in the case of education, how cooperatives are working, in the cases of health, how they are working, and multiple other aspects. So this was the main body part. Or you can quote more and more example wherever you feel it is necessary and wherever you have the example to put in. Like in the sustainable practices, one startup is there. This is cooperative SPICE. They are providing solar powered irrigation facilities to the farmers. This is in line with our nation's goal to achieve the carbon neutrality, and also in achieving the reduction in the carbon emissions. So this was the body part. Next comes the conclusion. Because in body we have written majorly the positives of this. So what we can write in the conclusion is, we can write some governmental measures in promoting more of the cooperatives. Like government has come up with some welfare scheme for the dairy sector, for the fishery sector, for the poultry sector, and the schemes for the handicraft and handlooms. Government has also come up with the one district, one product scheme. So these are in line with the cooperatives development. So this was the second answer. Let's see the model answer. So cooperatives, definition and linkage with the polity part. Now comes the major role of the cooperatives in promoting economic growth and sustainable development. How employment generation is there, promote sustainable agricultural practices, poverty reduction, quality education, empower women, healthy lives, good governance and effective institution. You can put some case study as well. And in the conclusion, with the sufficient financial and technical support, cooperatives can work in a very better way. They have the very high potential to drive the rural transformation. So this was the answer. This was additional information. If you know about any good international practices or any definition from some international forum, you can also write that. Okay, so let's move on to the third question. Comment on the economic implication of a scenario characterized by the double whammy of high inflation and falling consumer sentiment. This is a 10-marker question. In introduction, we can start with the current affair linkage. Or if you know some data, you can write in introduction. That is, retail inflation is reaching 7.44%, making investors and savers uncertain about the economic situation. It means that retail inflation is going very high, means we are connecting with the high inflation, and making investors and savers uncertain, means we do not have the confidence, means the consumer is having the less confidence in the economic situation. So by putting some data or the fact, we are connecting it to the question. So we are setting some context here. Let's see what is the main body. Before getting directly to the body part, that how it is having the implications on the economy, let's discuss two things or the meaning of these two things. High inflation and the falling consumer sentiments. High inflation. High inflation means that the prices of goods and services are increasing. Means people need more money to buy same goods and services. It means the person has to spend more money as compared to earlier to buy the same set of goods and services. It means our currency is depreciating. It means our currency is losing its value. Okay, first understand this. What are the implications of high inflation? And what all this will do? It will reduce the purchasing power of the consumer. Because now the consumer cannot buy everything at the same rate or at the higher rate it has to buy. So they will not buy, or they will buy very less, very essential products, not invest or the spending in the non-essential things. So first concept is high inflation and what are the implications. Now let's understand the second concept about low or falling consumer sentiments or the confidence. What does this mean? That people feel less confident about the economy, about the economic situation. Now people do not want to invest more or to spend more. They are now more cautious about the job security. Maybe unemployments or the massive layoffs is going on in the society. There are multiple reasons why the consumer sentiments is not there on the economy. So this is the aspect that why the person has the less confidence in the economic situation, maybe more cautious or maybe more stressed or anxiety about the job security, about the future economic situations, maybe due to some international happenings. But yes, less confidence is there of the consumer in the economy. Okay, so these are two aspects on which we have to dwell in our body part. Now let's understand what the question is asking. Question is saying that high inflation plus low consumer sentiments. We have to tell the economic implications. High inflation, now we get the idea that reduced purchasing power of consumer. Less purchasing power of consumer plus less confidence. It means person or the consumer will have restraints in spending. Then the consumer will not be ready to spend. When the spendings are less, means the demand is less. When the demand is less, it means it has a direct implication on the manufacturing and the service sector. It means the production will be less. When the production will be less, again layoffs will be there, unemployment will be there. Now they do not have the money to spend. Other consequences are poverty, low expenditure on the health, education. But if they have the low money, less money to spend, again this cycle will start. So this is a loop. So, and when the spendings are less, it means the Indian economy or the Indian GDP is mostly dependent on the consumption. Whatever GDP India produces, mostly part goes in the consumption, either by the households or by the government. But our Indian economy goes with the consumption. And when the consumptions are less, means the spendings are less. So it will have the high impact on the economic expansion. Low GDP, lower spendings, lower production, lower demand, more and more unemployment. So these are the economic implication of both these aspects. Next comes high inflation plus low confidence. This was the consumer point of view. Now comes from the business's point of view. When there is much more uncertainty in the economy, businesses will also not invest in the long term. They will anticipate that when the situations will be normalized, then only I'll do the spendings or I'll do the investment. So again, this will have the impact on the economy. And when the businesses will not spend or will not invest, means the production will be less and whole cycle again starts. So this was from the business point of view. Next comes the RBI point of view. What are the economic implications for that? For the higher inflation, what RBI does? For the higher inflation, RBI takes the stance of tight monetary policy. But now this is the case of low confidence also. Low confidence means the people are not spending enough. It means RBI has to boost the spending in the economy. So it has to take easy money policy. Easy monetary policy. But these are contradicting to each other. So RBI has a conundrum in front of it, that in this contradictory situation, what is the balance RBI has to take? So this comes the policy challenges with the RBI. Because to boost the spendings or the confidence in the public, RBI has to take the easy monetary policy so that people will take much more money from the market and spend more, and whole cycle goes on. But this is the case for the high inflation, and RBI Monetary Policy Committee has a target of 2 to 4%. 4% plus minus 2% means 2 to 6%. Targets inflation we have to maintain. So this is the issue or the dilemma for the RBI as well, to take the calibrated approach in this regard. Next comes the governmental and the implications on the government. Government, on this low confidence or the low spendings of the people, government spends in the economy. They comes up with the targeted stimulus packages or increases the salary of the government employee. But again, when this comes up, it will have the high inflationary impact. So now government has also to be cautious for taking these decisions. So this is the conundrum which is asking in the question, that double whammy of high inflation and high consumer sentiments. So we have to discuss all these things in the answer part. So now let's move on to the conclusion. Conclusion is, as we have seen the scenario in the body part, that this is a issue because both the things are having the negative impact on each other. So how to take a balanced or the calibrated approach? So these are the measures, like for RBI, monetary measures, and for the government, financial policy measures. They have to go hand in hand with each other, so that whatever the measures they take, they will not have the higher inflationary impact, or simultaneously they can boost the people's confidence in the government or in the economy, so they will try to spend more. But this is not the one day issue, and this is not even solvable in the one day. So what we have to do, we have to structurally reform. We have to reforms in the structural aspect also, like fiscal consolidation, financial market reforms, agricultural reforms. We have to see why people do not have the confidence, because due to some structural aspects also. Agricultural reforms, labor market reforms, and multiple others as well. Infrastructure and investment. So this way you can conclude your answer. Let's see the model answer. The model answer is starting with the double whammy, means the unique and the formidable economic challenge, what we have discussed, that in one case RBI has to take the tight money policy, or in the second case it has to take the easy monetary policy. So this is a unique and the formidable economic challenge, and how it dampens the spending and investment. Next comes the economic implications. So we have everything discussed in our discussion. So this way they have discussed the whole model answer in the body part, and finally comes with the example that it is the complex issue. We have to take the multifaceted approach, followed by, and we have to take the examples from the history. We have to collect the data that in the past, whatever the situation has arisen up, how we had dealt with that. So with this, our discussion for the 3 questions is over. So that was it from my side. Thank you and have a nice day.